Mark Rogers TV running down positional units across the ACC. We stop in Miami, and we don't forget about special teams. Any football coach will tell you it's a third of the game. So a lot of important plays made in those units. We bring in Cam Underwood from State of the U to help us out. And Cam, the first thing you do, obviously, special teams, you look at that place kicker. How accurate is he? And for Michael Badgley, pretty darn good, 25 for 30 last year. He said 81% in 2 seasons, so got to be pretty pleased with that.
Yeah, can't really put it any better than that. Michael Badgley is one of the best kickers in America. Jersey Mike is his nickname because, well, he's from New Jersey. He's he's steady. He doesn't have the biggest leg, so you're not going to get the 55-yard bombs from him. But, when you're inside 40, 45 yards, he's pretty much money. Went 5 for 5 in the game against Nebraska last year on field goals, which tied a Miami Hurricanes record. May have set a record, something like that. So, definitely highly productive guy. So as far as our place kicking is concerned, we're in good stead. He hits his field goals. He makes his extra points. He's just consistent. He had a couple of kickoffs last year. We had another kicker, Jonathan Semerine, who handled those, but he would kick at least one out of bounds every single game. And then he got kicked off the team in the spring for, multiple violations. Excuse me. So he's gone. So either on kickoffs, we're going to look at Justin Vogel, who's our punter. We'll get to him in a minute. Or Diego Marquez, who is a JUCO transfer. He's going to be our backup kicker. And he might try to be either the kickoff specialist or the distance kicker for field goals and things like that. But as long as we have Michael Badgley as our number 1 place kicker, we're in a really good spot. And I know that there's the meme of college kickers and everything, and you always see them, teams playing for a field goal at the end and, it going horribly awry. But Mike Badgley is as steady as they come. So having him in a Hurricanes uniform for another year is a really, really solid position for us to be in.
Yeah, you mentioned the 5 for 5 game. So against Nebraska, you win that game in overtime with the huge lead that dwindled to nothing. You go to overtime, he hits 5 for 5. So obviously that was huge. The Virginia Tech game was another 3 for 3 effort there, and you win by 10. So he's pretty much the difference there. And that Pitt game that, again, you break out to a huge lead. It gets a little bit tight at the end, and he has another 5 for 5 day. So very important that he makes the makeable kicks. All right, you mentioned Justin Vogel, and you know how punting is. You got to see the guy punt for the entire season to see if the numbers are really what the value is because of the situation, because of the type of punting that plays to the situation. But if you just look at the numbers, this kid looks extremely dependable and very good at 42.8, 42.5 in his first 2 seasons, kicking the ball 119 times.
Yeah, that's a number of punts that we don't like to see, but the quality of those punts is extremely high. Justin Vogel comes back as a senior. He was voted first team All ACC in the preseason at ACC Media Days. He was actually the defensive representative for the University of Miami at the ACC kickoff in Charlotte a couple of weeks ago. So very highly esteemed player. And this just continues a tradition of excellence at punter for Miami. And I know people are thinking, okay, LOL, like, haha, yeah. But if you look, Pat O'Donnell with the Bears, Matt Bosher, who's been in the league for almost 10 years now. Jeff Fiegels, who was in the league for 22 years, whose son is committed in this recruiting class, by the way, and I'm sure that I'm missing some. So punter is another position where there's been a tradition of excellence at the University of Miami, and Justin Vogel really continues that. He's a big kid, he's 6'4", 215, 218 pounds, and he just goes out there and he does his job. He has a bigger leg than Badgley, so like I spoke of before, he could be the kickoff specialist. We haven't really gotten an official depth chart yet in fall camp, but just looking at the attributes of him as a kicker from previous years, that's something that he might be able to do this upcoming season. So you're looking at that. Vogel also has in the past been the holder on field goals and extra points. So he is in that whole process, making sure that the ball gets down for Badgley to kick it appropriately. And he's just a solid guy. He's a senior. He's 22 years old. So he's not going to be taken in by the moment. It's not going to be too big for him. It's not going to be too fast for him. Like we spoke of, 120 punts in the last 2 years, averaging 42.6 yards per punt. Look, proof's in the pudding. This guy is really good, and because of that, Miami punting is going to be pretty good. We also bring in Jack Spicer is his name. He came from the University of Florida as a transfer. I don't know if he has a scholarship or not. He might be a walk-on. Vogel also came from the University of Florida down to Miami, so made a wrong choice out of high school, but then, got themselves together a little bit later on. But he's going to be behind Vogel. He'll probably look to challenge to take over next year. So, we really have an effective two deep, it seems, at both kicking spots. Badgley in front of Marquez at kicker and Vogel in front of Spicer at punter. So on that end of the special teams, I think we're in a good place.
I got to think that they just get a bit confused on the shade of orange coming out of high school, and then they get it together and they get the right decision in order finally.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's not really the orange; it's the complementary color. It's like you put the orange with the green, or the orange with the orange with the green. That's the one I'm looking for.
When we look at the return game from last season, Cam, it looks pretty cut and dry. Mark Walton returned 17 kickoffs, Corn Elder 11 punts. They were the leaders by far in those two return units. So is it that cut and dry, or does somebody else jump into the mix?
With both of those guys really looking to be the number one guy at their respective positions, I could see Miami going in a different direction at returner. Mark Walton is explosive from, a running and receiving standpoint when you're running your offense. I think he was more explosive returning in high school than in college, so moving him away from that might be a good thing. He's definitely going to be the number one running back or the co-number one starter with Joseph Yearby. So maybe taking that wear and tear off of him. Same thing with Corn Elder because, he's the number one cornerback on this team. Other guys who can return kicks and have been working there, Stacy Coley, the star wide receiver who had a kickoff return touchdown as a freshman, Malcolm Lewis, who was electric returning kicks in high school, Sam Bruce, who's a true freshman, who also was electric. Malik Young is a freshman. He's very good at that. Braxton Berrios, more in the punt game than the kickoff game as a returner, but in the punt game, he has that short area quickness, which really becomes very effective and useful. So, you have a bunch of guys, and you could still see Elder and Walton back there as well. But, looking at some different guys, maybe even Amon Richards, freshman wide receiver, he's 6'2", he's a long strider, but, he had 3 or 4 punt or kickoff returns for touchdowns as a senior in high school last year. So there's a wealth of guys who have the ability to work in the return game. Tight ends coach, and he's the special teams coordinator. So the reports through camp is we've had a lot of different guys working at returning punts and returning kickoffs. So I get that Elder and Walton were at the top of that return rotation last year. They could see some kind of be in that rotation, but I'm really looking at other guys to really step up and claim the return spots as their own moving forward. And then hopefully, we are a little bit more successful on an average kind of thing. But, I can't really complain too much because, like I said, Corn Elder, Duke, you see in the video, it worked really well.
It did, and that we talked about it at the time. That's a complicated situation. Cam, people forget about coverage units. Hey, it's in the books. It's in the books. It's a W. Cam, people forget about coverage units. Any issues there? It's obviously not right there on the stat sheet. It's more of the advanced metrics of how well teams cover the punts and the kickoffs. But any issues there?
There have been in the past, definitely. We just kind of have to get the right group of guys out there, and you kind of have to be a psycho. Like, you have to be a psychopath when you're on coverage, just because you kind of have to throw caution in the wind. You have to run like your hair is on fire, and you just kind of have to go. We've been in the past, just like our base defense with our previous coaching staff and all that stuff, maybe a little bit too cautious even on return on coverage sometimes, and teams have been able to gash us a little bit in the return game. So really looking to really have I want a couple starters out there for one, just because those guys are going to be the kind of athletes that you're looking for on coverage. Texas did it for years. USC did it for years. Virginia Tech is famed for having their starters yell at the coaches, yell at the other players, get away from me. I'm taking this other rep on kick coverage, punt pump block, whatever, I'm going to be out there because they want to be out there because, again, like you talked about, it's a third of the interaction on the field, and they want to make a difference there. And, throughout camp, it's been, reported that Miami is working on pump block, working on kick blocking a lot more because back in, the glory days, back when I was in college in the early 2000s, we used to block kicks all the time. And I know that we had the one blocked kick at North Carolina 3 years ago, right before the half and things like that, but we haven't had too many. So we're really looking on getting back at that. So I want to see a couple starters out there. I want to see, a couple of the backups, and, the whole paradigm seems to have shifted, the whole mindset of everybody. And it's not passivity, it's aggression. So even the backups who aren't starting, like a Charles Perry, who could be a starting outside linebacker potentially. If not this year, then, maybe next year. I want to see him out there. I want to see him go hard. I want to see him decleat somebody. I want it to go, ooh, because he got hit so hard. So I want a mixture of youth. And I'm sorry, my Stitcher app for podcasts is just dinging all over the place. Apparently people are podcasting very often right now. So sorry about that, guys. But yeah, I want to see a couple veterans out there. I want to see some hungry underclassmen or backups, and a couple of, true freshmen to get their teeth wet. Stacey Coley was on kick coverage his freshman year, and he was a freshman All-American. So I want to see Sam Bruce or Amon Richards out there as well. Even if they're starting, I don't care because you got to pay your dues. So I really want to see that. And hopefully we don't have the kind of breakdowns that we've had in the past. But, if we have strong kickoffs from Bogle or Marquez or whoever it is, I think that'll help. We already spoke about the fact that Bogle is very good at punting, had multiple kicks inside the 20 each of the last 2 years. So that'll be a positive thing. So it kind of just all goes part and parcel. But as long as we do what we need to do and the way that they're being taught, I think that we'll be fine.
Yeah, those punters and kickers are lonely guys, but if you've got a good punter, man, he is the best friend of a defense, pinning offenses back inside the 10-yard line. And for the place kicker, hey, if you can cross the 50-yard line, get it close to the red zone, can't complete the third down play, hey, you want to know that you've got points in your pocket. And also, obviously, if you're looking to win championships, as Mark Richt is going for there at Miami, that there's going to be some nail biters against the best teams, and you got to know that a guy can hit from 40, 45 yards almost every time. All right, good stuff from Cam Underwood, State of the U, breaking down special teams at the U. Thanks a lot, Cam.
No problem. See you guys.